Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we're diving into modern philosophy. We'll explore dilemmas that question who we are and what's right and wrong. From AI to climate change, today's challenges are unprecedented. What does it mean to be human in an age of intelligent machines? What responsibilities do we have to future generations? So let's start with the big one, artificial intelligence. We're living in an age where machines can learn, adapt, and even outperform humans in certain tasks. This is mind-blowing, exciting, and a little bit terrifying all at the same time. Think about self-driving cars, algorithms that can diagnose diseases, and AI-powered assistants that are always listening. This rapid advancement in AI technology forces us to confront some really big ethical questions. For example, if an autonomous vehicle causes an accident, who's responsible? The programmer, the manufacturer, or the AI itself? And what about the use of AI in warfare? Can we really trust machines to make life or death decisions on the battlefield? And then there is the switchman's dilemma. It is closely related to the famous trolley problem in ethics. Here's an explanation. Imagine a runaway trolley that is heading down the tracks towards 5 people who will be killed if it continues on its current path. The switchman has the ability to divert the trolley onto a different track where it will kill only 1 person. The switchman must decide whether to actively intervene and cause 1 death to save 5 lives, or to do nothing and allow 5 people to die. This dilemma presents a moral quandary. Is it ethically justifiable to take an action that will directly cause someone's death, even if it saves a greater number of other lives? Does the switchman bear moral responsibility for the 5 deaths if he chooses not to act? Does he bear moral responsibility for the 1 death if he chooses to act? Now apply that to a modern car autopilot, who one day may be forced to choose who dies and who survives in an unavoidable accident. And if it's not enough already, ask if the autopilot should take into account the age of the participants. These questions about responsibility and accountability are just the tip of the iceberg. As AI becomes more sophisticated, we need to grapple with the very nature of intelligence and consciousness. Can machines truly think? Do they have feelings? And if so, what moral obligations do we have towards them? These are questions that science fiction has been exploring for decades, but they're rapidly becoming our reality. And as we continue to develop AI, we need to think critically about the ethical implications of our creations, because the choices we make today will determine the kind of future we're building, a future where humans and machines must coexist. Now let's talk about algorithmic bias. AI systems are trained on massive data sets that reflect societal biases. This means AI can perpetuate and amplify inequalities. For example, a biased hiring algorithm might screen out qualified female candidates, or facial recognition software misidentifying people with darker skin tones. It's crucial to address these biases in AI. We need ethical guidelines and diverse teams to create fair technologies. Let's talk about climate change. We're already experiencing its effects: extreme weather, rising sea levels, and mass extinctions. It's not just a scientific or political problem, it's a philosophical one about our relationship with the environment and our responsibilities to future generations. The decisions we make today will impact our children and grandchildren. Do we have a moral obligation to ensure a habitable planet for them? It's also about the countless other species that share our planet. Climate change is driving a mass extinction event. Do we have a duty to protect biodiversity? The choices we make today will determine our planet's future and our legacy. Now let's talk about environmental responsibility. For centuries, the dominant view in Western thought has been one of human exceptionalism, the idea that humans are somehow separate from and superior to nature. This anthropocentric worldview has led to the exploitation of natural resources, the destruction of habitats, and ultimately the climate crisis we face today. But as we become more aware of the interconnectedness of all living things and the fragility of our planet, there's a growing recognition that we need a new ethical framework, one that recognizes the intrinsic value of nature and our responsibility to protect it. This is where environmental philosophy comes in. Environmental philosophy challenges us to rethink our place in the world. It asks us to consider the moral status of non-human entities, from animals and plants to entire ecosystems. Do they have intrinsic rights? Do we have a duty to protect them, not just for our own sake, but for theirs? These are not just abstract philosophical questions. They have real-world implications for how we live our lives, how we design our cities, and how we interact with the natural world. From reducing our carbon footprint to advocating for sustainable practices, we all have a role to play in creating a more just and sustainable future for all inhabitants of this planet. Because ultimately, the fate of humanity is inextricably linked to the fate of the Earth itself. Okay, so we've talked about robots taking our jobs and melting the polar ice caps, but what about the problems that already exist right here, right now? Because let's be real, the world can feel like a pretty unfair place. We're talking staggering levels of global inequality, where some people are born into privilege while others struggle just to survive. And it's not just about wealth, right? It's about access to education, healthcare, even clean water. We live in a world where your zip code can be a better predictor of your life expectancy than your genetic code. It's enough to make you want to grab a pitchfork and start a revolution, or at least maybe retweet something. But before we dismantle the system, let's take a minute to understand how we got here and what we can actually do about it. Now, when we talk about social justice, we inevitably bump into the thorny issue of identity politics. This is the idea that our political views are shaped by our experiences and identities, whether it's race, gender, religion, or anything else that makes us, well, us. And it's led to some pretty heated debates. Some argue that focusing on identity divides us, making it harder to find common ground. Others counter that it's impossible to address injustice without acknowledging the ways in which different groups are marginalized and oppressed. It's like trying to solve a puzzle without looking at all the pieces. So where do we draw the line? And then there's the whole free speech conundrum. We all like to think of ourselves as champions of free expression. But what happens when someone's right to speak infringes on another person's right to safety and dignity? It's a classic philosophical dilemma, balancing individual liberty with the well-being of the community. These are complex issues with no easy solutions, but the more we engage with these debates, the better equipped we'll be to create a more just and equitable society. Because ultimately, political philosophy isn't just about abstract ideas, it's about how we choose to live together on this messy, complicated, beautiful planet. Let's talk about something mind-blowing, the power to hack our own biology. CRISPR, gene editing, and designer babies. This isn't science fiction, it's happening now. CRISPR allows scientists to snip and edit DNA with precision, potentially curing genetic diseases and enhancing abilities, extending lifespans, and much more. Real-world implications that are both exhilarating and terrifying. But it raises serious ethical questions. Should you be allowed to choose the eye color of your baby? Or the brain size, the gender? The choices we make today will determine our future. Let's talk about transhumanism, using technology to transcend our biology. Think cyborgs, brain-computer interfaces uploading consciousness. It raises questions about what it means to be human. Is it our bodies, thoughts, or memories? If we enhance or replace these, are we still the same? Are we even human anymore? Proponents argue it's our moral obligation to improve ourselves. They see it as the next step in human evolution. Critics worry about tampering with our nature. What if only the enhanced are valued? It's a slippery slope. The quest for enhancement is nothing new. We're entering uncharted territory. The future is unwritten, but it's going to be a wild ride. We've talked about robots, gene editing, even uploading our brains into computers. But what is consciousness? What does it mean to be aware, to feel emotions? It's a question that's plagued philosophers and scientists for centuries. We can study the brain, map neurons, understand thoughts and actions. But how do atoms and molecules give rise to consciousness? How do neurons lead to joy, taste, or heartbreak? This is the hard problem of consciousness. Some believe it's an emergent property of complex systems. Others argue it's a fundamental property of the universe. And some think it's a spiritual essence beyond the physical world. It's enough to make your head spin. We may never fully understand consciousness, but we can still explore and ask questions. Let's talk about artificial consciousness. Could we create machines that are actually conscious, that feel emotions? It's a question that's both intriguing and unsettling. Imagine a world where robots could understand our hopes and fears, but it raises ethical concerns. Do they deserve rights and respect? What if they become more intelligent than us? We need to start grappling with these questions now. Let's consider the nature of truth itself. So what is truth? Sounds simple, right? Philosophers have wrestled with this for centuries. Is truth absolute, like a universal constant, or is it relative, shifting with perspectives and contexts? If truth is relative, can everyone have their own truth? This is where things get interesting and complicated. Defining truth is no walk in the park. The digital age complicates things further. We once relied on gatekeepers like journalists and academics, but the internet changed all that. It democratized information, for better and worse. Everyone became a potential publisher. This led to an explosion of content, making it hard to distinguish credible sources. Echo chambers reinforce biases. Misinformation spreads rapidly. So, where do we go from here? Cultivate media literacy and critical thinking. Support institutions committed to journalistic integrity. The pursuit of knowledge has never been more important. So we've been obsessed with space for ever. From ancient myths about celestial beings to Star Wars, it's this ultimate unknown. But as we get closer to actually setting up shop on Mars or elsewhere, things get complicated. It's not just about rockets and robots anymore, but about the ethics of stamping our human footprint on other worlds. I mean, imagine finding microbial life on Mars. Do we pack up and go home because it's their planet? Do we study it from afar? Or do we say tough luck microbes and start building our Martian condos? This is literally an alien concept to us, right? We've never encountered a situation where we have to consider the rights of life forms that aren't from Earth. And what about the environments themselves? Do we have the right to terraform Mars, to fundamentally change it to be more Earth-like? Is that ethical, even if it means we could potentially live there? These are huge questions and there's no easy answer. It's like that old saying, with great power comes great responsibility. Except in this case, the power isn't just about building spaceships, it's about deciding the fate of entire worlds. And the responsibility? Well, that's something we have to figure out together. See, space exploration forces us to confront some really fundamental questions about what it means to be human. What are our responsibilities to other life forms, even if they're microscopic? What does it mean to be a good ancestor to future generations who might one day live on other planets? And here's where it gets even more complex. If we do colonize other planets, what kind of societies are we going to create? Will we repeat the mistakes of our past, the colonialism, the exploitation, the inequality? Or will we have learned from our history and build something better? This isn't just science fiction, folks. These are real ethical dilemmas we're going to have to face sooner rather than later. And the choices we make today will have consequences for centuries to come. So, yeah, space is pretty awesome. But it's also a giant mirror, reflecting back at us our own values, our own flaws, and our own potential. And that is what makes this whole space exploration thing so philosophically fascinating. Okay, so we're not quite living in a sci-fi movie where robots rule the world, but technology is pretty much everywhere, right? I mean, I'm looking at you, internet, and you, smartphone, and you. AI is suggesting cat videos I didn't know I needed. But all this tech isn't just changing how we live, it's changing who we are. Philosophers have been wrestling with this idea of the human condition for centuries, trying to figure out what makes us, well, us. But now, technology is throwing a wrench into the whole thing. Like, when we spend hours on social media crafting our online personas, What does that do to our sense of self? Is our digital identity as real as our physical one? And then there's the whole question of artificial intelligence. If we can create machines that can think and learn and maybe even feel, what does that say about our own uniqueness? Are we just biological machines ourselves? It's enough to make your head spin, right? But here's the thing. Thinking critically about technology isn't about being anti-technology. It's about being pro-humanity. It's about making sure that as technology evolves, we evolve with it in a way that benefits everyone. One area where technology is shaking things up is the world of work. Automation and AI are changing the job market faster than we can keep up, and it's raising all sorts of ethical questions, like what happens when robots can do our jobs better and cheaper? Will we have mass unemployment? Will we need to rethink the whole idea of work itself? And then there are the social implications. Algorithms are increasingly making decisions that affect our lives, from what news we see to who gets approved for a loan. But algorithms aren't neutral, they learn on data, and data may have biases. So how do we ensure that these technologies are fair and just? These are big, complicated questions, and there are no easy answers. But the more we think about them now, the better prepared we'll be to shape a future where technology serves humanity, not the other way around. So, yeah, the future is uncertain, but it's also full of possibilities. And by engaging in these philosophical conversations, we can help create a future that's a little bit brighter, a little bit fairer, and maybe even a little bit more human. We've covered a lot of ground, from the ethics of artificial intelligence to the future of work. And the thing is, these aren't just abstract philosophical problems. They're issues that are shaping our world right now, and they're only going to become more pressing in the years to come. The good news is, you don't need to be a philosophy professor to grapple with these questions. Just by watching this video, you've already started to think critically about the big issues facing humanity. And that's what philosophy is all about. So thanks for watching. If you found this video thought-provoking, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more interesting content. Let us know in the comments which philosophical issue you think is the most important today. And most importantly, keep thinking, keep questioning and keep the conversation going.